I actually think that people who are considered an asshole are just like deeply misunderstood.
So that bodes the question, how long have you been an asshole?
30 years of my life.
So she's been recovering since childhood.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to realize that it's time to recover?
It is exhausting to want someone to be different than who they are. Step one is just shut your fucking mouth.
I'm sure it will work.
Today we're talking about how to not be such an asshole in your life.
How to recover from being...
I don't know if you ever fully recover. I think you just... What is it? Remission? Is that what happens to us? I don't know if we're ever like fully healed.
Are you a cancer patient? What the fuck is going on?
Man, do your temper at times? It could be cancerous to your life.
You definitely still have yours.
100%.
It comes out from time to time.
The reason that I can speak so eloquently to being an asshole is
because you're still recovering.
because I'm still an asshole.
Can you imagine? Yo, how do you speak so well on topic? It's because I'm still recovering.
Because I'm still a problem. I do the best I can. I go out into the world and I say, hey, listen.
Say hey.
I say, hey.
I'm an asshole.
If your nervous system wants to start a civil war with everybody.
If you're nervous.
Mine too. So here's how you can navigate it. Here's how you can manage it. That's why I speak so fluidly about it. I'm like, oh, you want to nuke every inhabitant in North America? Feels, brother. This is how I navigate it. So maybe it'll
I don't know what the listeners think sometimes.
Bring a little joy to your life. We don't have enough listeners yet, so they probably don't have a fully formed opinion about me.
Where does being an asshole come from? I think that's a great place to start this, is like, please quantify the journey
to becoming an asshole?
If we're going to recover, we must understand the journey for it. What leads to people being an asshole?
I actually think that people who are considered an asshole are just like deeply misunderstood.
Okay.
By like, you misunderstand yourself, like you're not fully connected to yourself. But I also think we're just misunderstood in society. I love how I just said we because
she is the
fully in it.
Leader of the community.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people who are called assholes are just more straightforward in their communication. I think somebody can also be, depends on the environment you're in and who you're around and their tolerance and capacity for certain types of conversations will determine if someone thinks you're an asshole. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not, and the way that you present information is like, it's honest, it's truthful. Mm-hmm. You're not being rude. You're not berating somebody. You're not calling someone down. It's just like very black and white. This is what's up. This is where we're at. This is what led us here. This is what we need to do. And some people, unless you massage them and, spoon feed it to them and be like, give them, what is it? The compliment sandwich. Oh, you're doing amazing. And then I'm going to put the truth in the middle. And then I'm going to give you a little bit more of a bum slap on the tail end. Like, some people can't handle it unless they receive information like that. So if you're the type of person who comes in and you're just like very straight up, very black and white, you tell the truth, you're not trying to be a dick. Mm-hmm. And you're not actually rude or insensitive. It's just people have varying thresholds. So I think in that capacity, it's like, you're not actually an asshole, but it's funny to crack jokes about it because you're just like wildly misunderstood by most people. And then I think you have the camp where it's like, okay, like you're kind of being a little bit rude, buddy. Name calling, deliberately trying to tear somebody down, take an inch off of them in a conversation. It's like
an inch? Try 6.
Just stick you 6 feet underground in a single conversation. Then you're like, okay, cool.
So that bodes the question, how long have you been an asshole?
30 years of my life.
So she's been recovering since childhood.
Mm-hmm. I was always outspoken. My parents in some ways appreciated it because my parents are like the leaders of that. My father's very direct. he at times probably falls into the camp of, I'm just going to tell it to you A, B, C, D, and we're not going to really give like a compliment sandwich around this. Just going to give it to you straight. And my mom is no different. My mom is quieter by nature compared to my dad. But if she has something to say, there's like no filter when it comes out. She's told me some crazy stories of being in the workplace and different things she said where you would absolutely be classified as an asshole for how you interpreted and like expressed things to people.
How do you think their influence played in your journey to becoming an asshole? Like, what do you think was the standout things that they either did or said, or the way you experienced your childhood that very much kind of influenced you having your own iteration of what you kind of grew up in, if you will?
Yeah. This was never spoken. It was just silently understood in my household that probably being mousy and submissive was like not it. I was never told, hey, you're not allowed to be like soft and more reserved. I didn't have to be told. There was just this like unspoken presence in our family of you speak up. If you have something to say, you say it. You don't let people walk all over you. I don't be anyone's doormat. I remember conversations with my dad and him saying, never ask for permission, only forgiveness. Like that was just the conversations in my household. And then I watched my parents in various scenarios take no shit from anybody around them. So it was kind of just like the environment that be tough, show up, take no prisoners, fuck it, figure it out later. And at times, like that was at different points in my life, maybe a little bit to my detriment because I didn't have tact or grace for how I approach things. But hindsight 2020 and like looking back, I wouldn't change it. I've had to learn how to soften and probably be more graceful and gentle. And I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for my own journey. Man, I would much rather have to learn how to soften than learn how to toughen up and speak up for myself. That's just my own personal take on it. I'm sure it's equally as difficult regardless of which end of the spectrum that you're on, but massive influence in my life. And also at times I fell into the camp of what I said earlier where I was like misunderstood. I wasn't actually being rude. I wasn't name calling somebody. I wasn't being aggressive. I said what the fuck I said. This is the truth. This is my truth in this moment. And when you are around a bunch of people who maybe don't know how to speak up for themselves or how to take up space, or they wouldn't say shit if their mouth was full of it, you are very uneasy to be around at times. So I think that was more my journey. Lots of people think you're an asshole, so how
I didn't say anything. Yeah, you're an asshole too. Welcome. Well, I've had enough of the attention.
I think we can both fall into
You were both
that.
asshole. I didn't say. I just asked questions out of curiosity. You're an asshole too.
Yeah.
Just welcome me to the party. Where were you going with that? Not really. Where were you going with that?
Well, like, I both think in some ways that we're, like, misunderstood
Sure.
in that sense. Like, depending on, like, where someone catches you in a conversation, somebody might be like, Far's an asshole.
Oh, 100%. I love it.
So I am curious on your end, like, what influenced that in your life? Or maybe why is it that people perceive you to be that way at times?
There's a few things that I think influence someone's perception of you, right? I think context is the number one version of it. And when I say context, I mean I come into an environment, whatever mood I'm in, whatever mood you're in, and whatever is going on is fully going to dictate my experience with you. And I said this in another episode. You can look at anything in multiple ways. You can look at something as someone's an asshole. You can also look at them as they're kind and loving. And you can look at them as, oh, he wasn't tough enough on this person or whatever. And one of the things that when I was growing up, I've said this to you, but my struggle growing up was I was 12 and I was like a full grown fucking man overnight. Like it was not comfortable. It was, I think, excuse me, I woke up at like 12 years old and I was like 6'1.5", mustache, like puberty punched me in the face. I didn't miss mustache, fuzz, armpit hair growing in places I didn't know hair could grow. Like a lot of things happened at once. And what I think I think what happened initially was a cascade of things. One, I'm Middle Eastern, so if you were a Middle East person of Middle Eastern descent, and your first day of public school in the U.S. was September 11th of 2001, I promise I didn't do anything. If that was your reference point, my from 8 to 12 specifically, I remember it was like, oh yeah, like I'm Brazilian or I'm Italian. Like the sheer idea that the culture I'm from, everybody kind of puts you in a box. Like my friends used to joke, like, and I'd make the joke because I'm self-deprecating, but it's the sandbox. Like we're all the same. Iraq, Pakistan, it's all the same shit. They're all bad. Like at the time, and I did it more out of the humor of realizing like it's really not that bad. It's what you see is not what it is. But when you're growing up and that is one of your reference points, it's like my self-esteem was not very high. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not even sure I'd be on the negative scale. It was so putrid at times that it was like, what the fuck are you doing? Then to have my growth spurt, and also one thing I learned in high school is like predominantly my experience was the smartest people I knew were like short. I didn't associate height and intellect didn't associate with at least where I went to school. Most of my friends who are very intelligent are like 5'6", 5'8" men. Like they're so intelligent, but at times I'm like, I think this makes up for the height complex and like you missed. I was just tall and I had some athletic capability and I had some physical. So like the cascade of everything happening at 12, because like I'm 6'3", I've grown an inch and a half in 20 years. Let's think about that. I got nothing after 12. God was like, we're gonna make you a tree. But at 12, I was like, I'm gonna be this tall person. Like I'm gonna be a basketball player. Like I don't have to be smart per se. And the culmination of all those things, I felt awkward all of the time. I'm foreign. I'm way too tall. I stand out like a sore thumb. I dress like my parents dressed me well. Don't get me wrong, but it's like I just dress quite significantly different. I can't fit. I'm growing out of shit all of the time. That's not comfortable. I'm sweating through everything. That's not comfortable. And so, in a lot of ways, I was very insecure. Didn't really have a footing when it came to human interaction, which is funny because if you ask a lot of my friends from high school and growing up, I was friends with a lot of different people in high school. Like I had friends in like the popular groups. I just never felt popular. I didn't really feel like I had my own space. And so I kind of, as I was growing up and then when I got to college, I think college was like the beginning of like, okay, like I can do this. Like there's a man here. Like people like you. Like you get to college, it's like clean slate. It's like nobody went to high school with you. Nobody knows that you were fucking 12, but also 45 at the same time. Like nobody knows. They're just taking you for. So I found college was easier for me to build relationships, and I kind of settled into that. And I went through some things as I was going through college and in my personal life. And even though I was settling into it, I still found myself at times like very passive, and not in the sense of like I let people walk over me because that didn't seem to happen as much. But I was always like in tune to what does someone else need, right? And I had a moment when I was 23. It was like the back half of 23. I was like, I had a 5-year window, like 18 to 23. I like changed a lot of things. Like I stopped shaving my head, made no sense, but like I legit stopped shaving my head, started like edging it up, going to the barber every 10 days. For no reason. My brother does that still, but I don't do that. Things I was interested in and things I'd pour my time into. As much as I liked it, it still just wasn't really me. And I think some point during like the back half of 23, right before I turned 24, I was like, I remember saying something to my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm just going to start shaving my head. And she's like, all right, cool. I was like, but I'm going to use a blade now. Like an actual like razor, not like the electric like shaver. Like I'm going skin. Like you're going to see this baby bottom ass shining on like a regular point. And I don't know what it was about that specific moment for me, but I like very much felt more grounded into the person I like felt I was when I was growing up. And that's when it shifted to me as I was learning a lot of things about internal work and personal development, where it's like you're actually all things at all times. It's being able to see it as it is and appreciate both sides, and then make the distinction of when does it matter for what and when does it not matter for what. And so I actually at one point over indexed into the other side. So I went from like super passive to like, I will cut your throat. Like I had like probably, and it wasn't that long of a period of my life. It was probably like a 90 to 120 day window where like it went so far in the other direction that I was like, I really don't like this at all. And then I kind of got very comfortable in like that midline for myself where it's like, I understand how to stand tall as who I am. I'm equally not like the shit starter confrontation, but like we can scrap at any time. Like you want to throw the gloves. At that time I was like, I'm good. And so as I was like working through that, I noticed with certain friendships, girls, etc., etc., and even with my parents at times, it was like, you know, you come off strong, or you're too sure of yourself, or like this. And at first it was a little bit of a struggle for me because I was like, am I being who I want to be? And then I started learning how to self-audit, like, where's the truth in what someone else is saying if it's opposite of how I feel I'm standing out? And then can I learn to become encompassing of that? And so for me, even nowadays, it's like when someone thinks I'm an asshole, I'm like, I totally see how you would have gotten it. Like, that's with everybody. And I don't even get sad because I understand in any context, anybody can be perceived as anything, you know? Like, we live in the internet world. A lot of people look at certain people on the internet and they're like, oh, such a nice, kind, giving person. I'm like, bro, I know what goes on behind those closed doors. Like, it's nothing like what you see. And I think being able to appreciate all sides of it it's been quite the journey. I think probably the last 5 years, it's become much more grounded. I think when I was leaving New York to go to California, it was one of those like, I'm good with this now. Like still moments where I've like asked myself questions, yet a much deeper understanding of what that looks like for me. And so I think just speaking from my own personal experience, I get the whole you're an asshole thing. I also don't find I struggle with the same feelings. And I think a big part of that is I have developed the capacity to have a very soft heart, which I find, just personal opinion, I find that that's part of what many men lack in modern society. And it's not like, oh, you have to be a pushover, but if you can't tap into like the softness of things, that doesn't mean be a pushover. That doesn't mean like everybody's a fucking spiritual woo and like I'm getting in touch with my inner self. Like, it's not that. It's just being able to have the capacity to live in the heart space, which I find, unfortunately, in the internet days, we almost have like people so over-indexed into being like, especially guys, like just being so soft. Like, I've seen friends of mine go down their little like spiritual journey, like spiritual crisis, as I call it. I'm like,
Terrible.
just like, I don't know. It's just, I think there's something to be said for being able to stand tall and equally having a soft spot. So, what led you to realize that it's time to recover? I think this is the big thing. I think there's a lot of people who relate with being an asshole, and I think there are also people who think they're recovering. But I think actually the practice of recovery and thinking you're recovering are two different things. What was the moment for you, or what was the series of experiences you went through where you were like, I should contemplate and highly consider that maybe this is not the best thing for me at all times?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I was opposite in the sense that I didn't have like a 90 to 120 day window where I was
Swinging.
just like on the more extreme side. The majority of my teen years,
Yeah.
I was there. It was much longer than 90 to 120 days. Wordsmith would get into
Lethal.
verbal debates with people. And So I lived like that for a long time, and it was a defense mechanism.
Sure.
Created safety. Growing up, being out in public with my brother who has like severe disabilities, being able to say something that got like a group of people to just like instantly fuck off and not even want to look at me. I got really good at dismantling somebody where they stood with my words. And I was like that for a long time. I remember there being a short period where I had a friend and she was like, you know, you're a bit of an asshole to people. And I was like, oh, well, like maybe there's some validity in that. But what was interesting is I think that she probably had that conversation with me when I was like maybe 19, 18, 19. And so then I just stopped speaking up completely because it was like, oh, well, if every time I speak up it makes other people uncomfortable, then I'm just not going to say anything. And when I did that, I ended up with the worst anxiety I ever had in my life. I had my whole life up until that point was just like, no, if I think it, I'm going to say it. And I was unfiltered and I just like had kept nothing in. And then I went the opposite extreme where I like wasn't saying anything at all. And I just had like crippling anxiety at that point. So that was short lived. I think I maybe tolerated it for about 60 days. That was my 60 days. It was just like, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to chill and I'm going to pull back from being so direct. And then after that, I kind of learned a little bit of a balance and I wasn't so like outwardly aggressive after that moment. I had kind of found I might have really intense feelings at times, but I wasn't like acting them out with other people or like getting into these like battles and debates with people. I crack jokes about like being a recovering asshole. I don't know. I probably started to shift when I was like in my early 20s. And you might be like, oh, well, you've recovered more in the last couple years than like prior. But like, bro, where I came from, no, this started like early 20s.
Sure.
It's very tiring to fight people all the time. It is exhausting to just constantly be in a debate and a battle. People are going to people. They are going to do things you don't like and you don't understand. And the only reason you don't like it is because you want it to be different than what it actually is, or have them show up differently for whatever beliefs and constraints you think are true about the situation. And it is exhausting to want someone to be different than who they are. And I think that when you realize that and you realize how much energy you expend trying to control people, you start to like let it go and you stop interjecting, trying to save someone from themselves, trying to argue your point to get somebody to change. Because I think a lot of times we end up in debates with people because we're looking to change their mind. I'm going to say it this way and I'm going to like dismantle your argument with all of this. And then like you're going to see it from my point of view. And even if you feel like you've won the argument in that moment, people are going to do exactly what the fuck they want to do, independent of that conversation. So, like, what was the point? I've seen that so many times. Girlfriends in abusive relationships, staying in a job they don't want, making like a dumb life decision where you're like, the writing is on the wall. There's no point of arguing with somebody. They're just going to do it. And even in that moment, if somebody presents as like, oh yeah, that's awesome, thanks so much. And they present as, I don't want to say submissive because that's not, it's not really submission, but it's like maybe agreement, or they kind of like lay their own sword down and it's like, oh, okay, like I'm in agreement with you. 9 times out of 10, they turn around and they do the thing anyways that
it's a pump fake.
they said that they weren't going to do. So what is the point? So for me, when I like really started to notice that, I just stopped caring to interact with other people in that way. Do you? Take the fucking dryer into the bathtub. Put the fork in the toaster. Like, you're going to do it anyways.
Yeah. I think people fight, or not even, I think people want to win fights more than they want to understand why these disconnects are happening. And then by understanding these disconnects are happening, create the opportunity to not have these disconnects. People are more married to being right than they are understanding.
Yeah, it's just protective. It's like you feel like something was an injustice to you or it hurt you. How could you do that to me? And then if your default is immediately to battling it out with somebody, you can't even see them, hear them, understand where somebody could possibly be coming from because you're so hurt. And without practicing, like slowing down and pausing, you just like immediately default into self-defense.
What does perpetuating argument look like for you? Like, how did it show up as you were going through your own journey as an asshole? Like, were you the type of person who like tried to poke the bear, or was it more like people were trying to poke the bear with you and then you had to kind of like pull off? Was it more directed at you, or was it more like you were trying to?
I actually was terrified of myself the majority of the time. And I didn't like it when people would poke me because I didn't trust how I would respond if someone kept poking me. And I had enough reference points in my life that when somebody pushed me too far, the way I responded was like ballistic and out of control. So I didn't really try a lot of times to go out of my way to find myself in debates or arguments with people. I'd be like, please leave me alone. I don't want to have this conversation with you. And I would always say, like, I just remember this so viscerally growing up as like a young kid and teenager. I was just like, I'm going to give you 3 warnings. Like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you about this. And then people would keep poking at me. And I'd be like, I already told you once. Please leave me alone. I don't want to have this conversation. And then they would keep going. If you do it to me one more time, I'm going to punch you in the fucking mouth. And then they would do it. And then I would end up in a fight. That was like a routine thing when I was growing up. I was just like 0 to 100. So perpetuating it for me was probably not just like walking away. It's like, I'm pretty good. I don't have any of this in my life now because of like who I'm around, but I'm pretty good at picking up if somebody's going to be like difficult to deal with. Poking, antagonistic, like looking for a fight. At that point in my life, I probably saw it, but like wouldn't leave the situation or the scenario. Now, and I think that part of that was perpetuating it. Like you go to the bar and you see some guys who are out drinking and it's like, you know, this asshole is like looking for somebody in the bar to like get into a fight with. You can just see it.
Yeah.
Chip on their shoulder. You know you're going to pick the biggest person in the bar to like scrap it out and just be difficult with.
Yeah.
You can pick up on that energy with somebody. Perpetuating it for me was like you picked up on that energy, but you didn't remove yourself out of the situation. And then you found yourself in moments where you behaved in ways that you weren't really proud of. That was my scenario with it more often than not.
How did you learn? So I love that you kind of shared that the whole like you go to a bar and you can feel someone's just the energy is just
100%.
trying to start a fight. So there's obviously situations where people are engaging you out of curiosity, right? To like try to understand you. For you, how did you learn how to discern the difference between this person's curious and actually cares versus this person is trying to fight me? Because I find for a lot of people, it's very difficult to be like, those two lines are very muddied at some point if they've gone through, because I have a lot of background on your experience, and what I've learned is that line is very blurry for a long time. Is like understanding like, okay, just because this person's asking me, I promise you this person's not like trying to antagonize me. I just probably feel a certain way because my experience says that's what this means. How did you figure out how to discern or like make the delineation that, okay, this isn't always trying to start a fight. It's actually someone trying to care.
I think you can feel people's energy at times. So somebody asking you questions and they change their tonality and they calm themselves down and center themselves around you and they kind of slow down. that's a more curious state than somebody who their voice is getting a little bit louder. You can see that they're like visually becoming frustrated with you. Their body language is closed off and they're almost becoming like defensive. Like you can see somebody like getting bigger instead of calming down and like coming into the space with you. I think a lot of it for me was body language, because I would watch these people try to get like big and like puff up their chest and be like, you know, I'm going to tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing. And soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm going to fuck this person up. I don't want to. Please don't push me, because like nothing good happens if you keep like poking the bear with me. So I think it's like, how does someone show up? Because I've also had people where it's like, calm down, change their tone of voice. Hey, like, can we talk? Are you open to this? And it's like, I saw no visual signs of frustration. Even if I didn't maybe feel comfortable, it's like, I didn't feel like they were trying to like bait me into a fight.
Was there a distinct moment with any person that kind of like lets you feel like it's okay? Like this person cares, but I also don't have to go attacking. Like I don't have to stay in a almost like a defensive state.
Yeah, I would say like our interactions at various points have led to that. I was always waiting for you to like fight back. I was like,
yeah.
Oh my God, like antagonistic. I was antagonistic. It's like, do you want to dance? Let's fucking dance. And you're like, I have no interest in dancing with you.
I don't even know how to dance. She's like,
what's your deal, lady? Yeah, so I would say in our interactions, I don't remember the first time that I was like, oh, this person isn't trying to like bait me. Probably years ago, but I can't tell you the exact moment. I can tell you a recent moment that I had with somebody else where I was like, wow, we've come far. I was highly agitated, just in like a grumpy state, like, leave me alone. I'm probably overstimulated and there's too much going on. And they're just like, you know, I notice X, Y, and Z. And they were trying to like get a pulse check on me with where I was at. And holy shit, did I like, you want to talk about being in recovery? Like relapse. At a moment, and I was like, why do you want to know? And just immediately defaulted to fuck off. Like I didn't want the curiosity. I felt like I was being infringed on. And then it was like, you're not usually like this, so I'm curious. Are you good? Like I'm trying to see where you're at. And I was so annoyed that I was like, do you want an apology from me for being like this? And then just immediately went into like, let's dance. Like that old pattern just came up. And then I realized that I was trying to fight this person. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I put down my food and I walked over across the room, gave him a hug. And as soon as I gave him a hug, I just started bawling because I was like, you're like sitting here, you know, open body language, just looking at me like, are you good? You're not usually like this. And I'm like, do you want me to say fucking sorry? Like, you're clearly trying to connect with me. And I'm like, I'm going to burn your eyebrows off.
Yeah.
But it's taken a long time. You know what else I think? For anybody listening who struggles with that, it is so raw and vulnerable to realize that you're trying to fight with somebody and then soften and not continue to attempt to attack the other person. Holy shit. Like, I almost feel in that moment that is taking off more armor than anything else, because you were like ready to go. And you like, you're in that state. I want to fight. Like, get away from me. Super protective. You're almost in like survival mode. Yeah. So to realize that you're doing it and then pause and then like let down all of your weaponry and go over to somebody and just be like vulnerable and connected to them. Nothing is more difficult than that. The first couple times you do it. And then I think once you do it a couple times, you catch, okay, this is what puts me into this state and I don't like getting there, so I can like see the pattern before I get to the moment. But I think that's why we get stuck.
Mm-hmm. What does your process for disengaging look like? Like you're alluding to the idea that like your tendency as a fighter, like you're
100%.
you're 100% a boxer. Like mitts are on. You walk in the door, it doesn't even matter if you say anything. Mitts are on. So what does disengaging look like for you to help you? It sounds like you're saying emotionally regulate, like just soften. Really, what does that process look like? Like how do you do it? Like that's the question of the hour.
I think it's situational.
Mm.
I'll just like air it out for anyone who's listening to this. I can become easily overstimulated in a room full of a lot of people and a lot of noise. It's easier if I'm in your house than you being in my house, because when I go into somebody else's space or into like a public setting, I'm like, oh, you don't get to control this. Like, you don't get to own this. So there's a level of acceptance that I already have leaving somebody else's environment in my environment. Like, if I had a house full of people and I became overstimulated, I would become so agitated so quickly. I would find that incredibly difficult. So the way I would deal with that, noticing that frustration coming up, would be like different based on the situation I was in. If I was in my house and I started to feel it with a group of people, I would straight up probably like leave the room, go outside and stand on the balcony, and I would just like stand out there for 10 or 15 minutes. Completely remove myself from the situation. I'd probably do the same if I was at like a work setting. If someone was listening to this and you struggle with that as well, it's like overstimulated, overheightened. You know, if you start reacting to people in this moment, like nothing good is going to come from it. Everyone's just going to catch strays. Literally leave the environment. Go breathe by yourself. No music. Nothing. No phone. Disconnect. Any noise is just extra. You're already overstimulated. Don't add to it. Which can also be hard because you almost want to self-medicate with
the phone, the noise.
Like, and then you just add more shit to your nervous system, but that doesn't help you. And then heaven forbid somebody walks in on you trying to take a moment while you're sitting there scrolling, trying to like self-regulate. You're like, get away from me. So I think it's situational dependent. I think if it was like that, I could very much see myself turning into like an asshole and wanting to lash out at everybody. I, in those moments, can feel so agitated that I would want to turn off the TV, kill the music, turn all the lights off, and be like, get the fuck out of my house. Probably not the way that I want to present myself and react in front of a group of people. So I think taking space, breathing. I think if somebody's trying to like bait you into an argument and you're somebody who naturally is inclined to get into a fight with somebody, hey, I understand you're frustrated. I said this. At this point, this conversation's no longer productive. So I'm just going to like take space until we can like pick it up later. And if it's someone you care about, like I love you and I care about you, but like I'm not going to do this. If it's somebody that maybe you wouldn't say I love you to.
Sure.
It's just like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. I value you as a human. And I'm going to, like, I think we should pause this conversation and pick it up later. Because, like, nothing good is going to come. If you can see it, you're so much better to be the one who speaks up and, like, puts the boundary in place, almost.
Cool. So you basically are, how you've kind of elaborated on all of this is don't try to make people who they aren't, so don't fight with reality. Create space when you are in those moments. So let's say that's like the process. Create space. You stopped arguing with reality, and then regardless of the situation, an outcome or a moment happened where you're still upset, you're still frustrated, etc. So you create the space. What do you do with this space? So this is the part that I find a lot of people in recovery don't really understand, because they kind of go through this loop of like, okay, I should stop fighting about everything, and okay, I need space. At some point, you have to still learn how to work with people. It's called connection. It requires two in most cases. So what does that look like from your experience when it's, okay, I'm not going to fight with this. Okay, the reality is, even if I don't fight with reality, sometimes people are going to people, which means I might need to create space because I may not be capable or apt or be in the emotional state in this moment to do this. What is the downstream component from there. Because if all we lived in is just those two things, at some point you're probably just gonna be like, holy fuck, I'm exhausted. I'm trying not to fight with reality, and I keep creating space and nothing's changing, and people want things to change. So what does your process look like when you are in space? What helps you facilitate recovery or healing, for lack of a better term?
How do you heal?
How do you heal?
I think it's, as you say often, curiosity. What about that interaction led to this or me feeling this way, and not placing the blame on the other person, but like, what about that dynamic made me go 0 to 100? What do I, maybe what does it remind me of? How did I get to that moment? What did I miss in that interaction that led me there? And then, like, how do I want to respond or interact with this moving forward? You have to take the time to self-reflect. I can't even sit here and tell you that that I would be better off going to your house with a bunch of people and how I would navigate that versus a bunch of people being in my house and me being overstimulated, without the ability to check in and be like, why did that feel so out of control? How could I even make the discernment that it is easier for me? I would much rather go to your house than have everyone come to mine. Yeah. That'd be so much more easy to manage for me. But I can't even identify that for myself if I don't have a moment where maybe I don't show up the way that I want to. This isn't how I want to be, but it's like, okay, cool. Like, what led to that? And then how do you support yourself in it?
Sounds like you're almost saying, like, focus on what you actually have power over, which is yourself. Which is often the place that I find for many people in recovery is a challenge. Because there's only one person in recovery who was the asshole, and that was you. Nobody else. So, very insightful.
I mean, I've also went through real recovery, so this applies there too. You got no one to blame but you. The only person who's responsible is you.
There's only one asshole here.
I also think too, and I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but as somebody who had a wicked temper and at times probably found myself in many situations where my emotional reaction to things was terrifying. That's the only way that you like rebuild trust with yourself. I went through, and I still struggle with it, a long period of time where I didn't trust myself in interactions with others. Like, I had so many reference points of like being pushed at, feeling like I was put into a corner, and then the way I interacted with it was scorched earth. Wreck the relationship, destroy the other person, say things I couldn't take back, do things that I would look back on and be like, holy fuck. Like, good God, if you would have just left.
Yeah.
Or not done, insert whatever, this wouldn't have happened. And when you do that enough times, you don't trust yourself. And then that's terrifying, because when something comes up that triggers you and you're like, oh, well, I really love this person, or I really care about this thing, or I really love this and it means something to me, you don't have enough deposits like on the opposite side to feel confident in your ability to handle it.
Yeah.
And then you also struggle to be vulnerable with other people, because it's like, feels like fucking live wires in there, and I have no repetition to feel that and not respond in a way that's like detrimental to things in my life.
What's helped you develop a new sense of trust with yourself?
Keeping my mouth shut when I'm super frustrated. Like, that's like a surface level answer to it, but literally choosing to like not respond in a lot of scenarios that I would have. If I didn't like something that somebody said to me, like, I would want to like hurt them. And then it became a battle of like, how far can I take this? And oftentimes I would take it so far that there was no
Point of return.
yeah. So for me personally, it's like, okay, this person said something that triggered me. My default is like, wordsmith, I'm going to destroy you in this entire relationship. I'm just like not even going to reply or respond. And I'm willing to bet there's been lots of moments over the last decade of my life where somebody thought I was passive or being passive aggressive, or maybe like, oh, like, you don't have anything to say about this. It's like, oh no, I actually love you so much that I'm just going to shut the fuck up and sit here and ride this out until I feel grounded. So I think whoever's listening that like legitimately like that is your struggle and your default is going there. It's like you have to do different.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point you're like, okay, well now I'm really good at not responding. It's like skills. You're stacking skills. Skill number 1 is like, don't
Pause.
engage in the fight.
Pause.
Yeah. So now I'm really good at this. Cool. I have learned that I'm not just going to like jump in the arena and brawl it out the moment that something happens. That's like step uno. I think the next phase is, okay, how do I communicate how I feel without attacking this person? Mm-hmm. I notice that I'm feeling this and I feel frustrated. For me, I had to like write my shit out in advance. This is how I feel. This is what's coming up. And I'd had to like process it by myself before I could engage with somebody else with it.
Yeah.
So step 2 is like, how do you express how you feel without blaming and attacking the other person while understanding that like it's not going to come out super well. It'll be better than what it was before. But like you're not going to be great at it because you've never done it before.
Yeah, I understand.
You're also going to be terrified doing it because the last time you spoke, you just came out of a season of silence. Now you're trying to re-enter the relationship and communicate. And you're like...
I'm like thinking back to some of our conversations. I'm like...
You're like a baby giraffe learning how to walk. So I think it's that step 2. And then step 3, it's funny. It's like, now you know how to share better and set a boundary. And then I think it's like learning to like, okay, can we get to the point that like, you're willing to just like, tell me what's going on with you. But if you're explosive and you're a hothead, step 1 is just shut your fucking mouth. Just learn how to shut up and sit there. I couldn't have started with where I am today. Like step 1 was like, be quiet.
Oh, I agree. I have some very firsthand experience with the rainbow of not, as I call it.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's challenging for people to do that because you don't know how to like deal with all those feelings.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too is we are so far removed from creating space to let feeling pass and fully experience it. I think that's the big struggle for a lot of people, and for all of my fellow assholes that are still in recovery. That's usually the thing that you think about. Okay, when were the times you made the most asshole-like comments? You were caught in the wound or in the feeling or in the anger and you just ripped one off. No, I'm serious. I look at, and I say this as someone who appreciates crude and dark humor, right? I think of all of my best one-liners that I've had. There's no world that came from fucking joy. That 1000% came from anger, spite, disarray. Like you went down a deep rabbit hole for like 5 minutes, and then you're like, I got the one-liner for you.
Nuke.
Braid your hair and sing Kumbaya. Like that's, it's just like, it gets dark for some people. Mm-hmm. But, and there are some beautiful things that I think come from darkness always. It's learning how to channel it to facilitate very healthy communication, which is its own recovery journey, if you will.
So you're good at feeling.
Very. Now, let me rephrase that. Now I am. I wouldn't tell you that was a whole life I'm 32. That's probably been 5 years.
So somebody who's listening to this and is maybe in the, oh God, I have to pause phase of what they're going through. How do they feel? How do they drop in and like feel what's going on with them without one, like maybe accessing it, like letting that expression be there and the feeling to pass through, and two, creating that self-trust to do it? Because like when you first start feeling what is going on with you, you're like, this shit is going to engulf me and I'm going to die. Like, what if I never come out of it?
In case you're wondering, she's speaking for herself.
Anybody who says that that's not a fear is full of shit, in my opinion.
100%. The intensity of emotion it can be quite high end.
So, how does somebody learn to feel?
There's a couple ways. I generic answer A would be go to therapy. That would be generic answer A. That would be one. The other one is, I think it's a combination of two things. It's one, creating the space for yourself and like legitimately just breathing with your feeling. Sounds crazy to a lot of people, but I remember one time you were very emotional sitting right there, and I was like, just do like 10 nose breaths and we'll get through whatever the hell you're feeling. And it was like crazy to watch you shift like that. It changed your state. I think being able to pause and then breathe, as woo as that might sound to some of the audience, it is fundamentally one of the best things you can do. And as a part of that practice, you can even go as far as writing, what am I experiencing right now? And you can start writing. Like, I think writing is an easy thing for most people. Most people feel safe in some capacity if they can write something down to like clarify their thoughts. If they're afraid of the expression, writing is an easy place because nobody's going to see it. It's just you and the paper, right? Creating the space to just write, and also having a person that you can trust to like go through your experiences with emotionally, that you can be like, hey, this and this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. Can you help me support that? If you can find that one or two people that you can dance in that arena with, I think it's extremely invaluable, because I've learned this through years of deep introspection. Some of my best understandings of my own self have come from time spent alone, yet some of my best understandings of the interconnectedness to the world based on who I am has come through interacting with people. And I find you need to have the space with people just as much you need the space for yourself. So I think it's creating a system for yourself where it's sit with you, breathe, right, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? What did I notice about this that, like, why was it so? And starting questioning it. And then also having the space to go back and forth with someone, whether that's through questioning or it's just like, hey, I want to share how I feel. And then what do you see? I find when we open up a space to go through our expression, there's a lot of resolve that we create. I've had my own experiences expressing how I feel, and I don't always inherently agree with the other person's perspective. Yet them sharing their perspective, I can usually see something that maybe I needed to understand for myself. And that's something that you only develop through practice of, like, I'm sharing my feelings with someone else. They might give me their feedback on their own. Most people run to, they don't understand me. I'm being misunderstood. And at some point you actually realize, no, they're human. They have their own experience and this is their perception. So what can I learn from the fact that there is an alternative view? Going back to the beginning when you were like, you're an asshole too. It's like, okay, somebody else has the alternative or a perspective that I even consider. Doesn't make it wrong. They might just see it from a different lens, and exploring the idea that there's some value in that, so you learn how to manage your emotions, is a really good exercise. It's not comfortable for most people. Mm-mm. It's also, I've found, one of the fastest ways to settle into yourself and be like, I didn't even intend that. And I don't even know how you got there, but like, great to be aware that that could be something. When I started doing that younger, I think that very quickly led me to, some people, the version of me that sometimes comes off really strong somehow is being mistaken for passive. Interesting. Didn't think of it that way. I don't feel that way. So then it's like, okay, what's my midline? It was easier to find my midline when there wasn't people saying exactly what I believed I was doing. I also was fortunate enough to have two people in my life that when I went there, I had the trust there that they wanted what was best for me, but instead of telling me how they wanted me to be, they would ask questions to help me understand what that looks like for myself. I think that's an extremely invaluable thing to have. So if you can have a couple of people who you can trust deeply and they can ask the questions that help you find your own path through your own voice, it's really valuable. So I would say those are probably the big things on how do you get settled within it. It's those things. But that's how to recover from being an asshole.
I have one. I don't know if it'll land for people. I think it depends on like how deep down the rabbit hole
Sure.
you go. Something that has helped me in feeling stuff is being aware that at any point you can pull out of that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done like body scan, like meditations before, drop into your body. Where do you feel pain? Connecting to different parts of yourself. There is the same feeling I get every time I do it. The very first time that I experienced it, I felt like my whole body was just like engulfed.
Engulfed in flames.
And yeah, and I was like,
wow.
what the fuck is going on? It felt like my body like just took up all the space in the room, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I got lost inside of my own
Experience,
yeah. Scared the shit out of me. And I was like, I need to like come out of this. Like I don't want to feel it. And I did. And then I was like, oh, well, I can come out of it when I get into a state like that. And now I'm curious to explore it again. So I think the feeling will pass. And if you direct your focus away from it, if it's too overwhelming, it makes it more tolerable when you're learning how to do it. Like if you feel rage and it spooks you, you can shift your focus to something you know naturally brings you joy or will make you laugh or will change your state. And as you learn to do that, it gets easier to trust, oh, I'm going to feel all of this in this moment.
100%. I think it's a useful tool for sure.
God, I wish someone would have told me that. I was like, get me out of this. I'm terrified.
Of course. It's in IFS, it's like identifying what you're experiencing, right? It's like, this is what I'm feeling. Okay, I can also come out of this type thing. And I think that's for depending on how much or how intense or what your history is. I think that's something that people don't see. Depending on what you experienced also dictates how much of that has utility, right? I think for you especially, and I think for a lot of people who are listening, there's a ton of utility in like feel through it and then realize you can pull out of it at the same time. I think at some point too, and you've obviously developed this from a lot of the conversations that we've shared, but it's also being willing to be like, it's also okay to sit in that feeling, to feel the purity of it and let yourself understand that like it's a feeling. It doesn't have to control you. It doesn't have to consume you. And it can drive you in a very positive manner. There is beauty in using dark energy to create light. I think for a lot of people, they just look at their dark energy and they're like, man, like it's so bad and nothing good comes from it. That's not inherently true. I don't think that has to be true forever. If it's the only energy you access to move forward, then yeah, you'll end up empty. If it's a place you can tap into from time to time and understand its utility, that's a different story. But you won't learn that until you can actually sit with the feelings that you go through.
I think when you very first start, I know I felt this. Like I said, it's the fear of being engulfed. You almost have to dabble a little bit into it and then learn that you can come out. And each time you do that, you develop more trust. And then you're just willing to feel all of it. But reps, it's no different.
Practice.
Step 1, shut your mouth. Do not engage.
Step 1, don't argue with people. Step 2, create space.
Step 3, self-reflect. Step 4, make adjustments based on your findings. It's true. I also think, like I said at the beginning, I think a lot of people who are labeled as like, this person's an asshole, it's probably just like misunderstood. Like you said,
Sure.
context dependent. How do you deliver it? And then also, if your default is just like, ream this person, and you have no pause in you whatsoever, then your reputation and people's perception of you becomes like, man, this guy's just a fucking dick. And you're not. You just are unstable within yourself, and then you
100%.
lash out at people around you, and you're not actually mean at all. You just have not developed the skills to self-regulate.
Always a skill issue.
I suppose this is true.
Well, subscribe and like and all of the generic podcast, YouTube comment things here. No ads yet.
Maybe ever.
Maybe ever.
You and me are too much of an asshole to
Yeah, fuck that. Fuck that. Make sure you.
end the show with.
We were too much of an asshole to hit you guys with that. So we'll see you in the next one.